Get your hood rat hands off the wheel before I break them. Officer Dawson ripped Alexis Ward's door open, metal shrieking as he dragged her onto the gravel shoulder. Riker shoved her forward, his palm crushing the back of her neck as he muttered, "Women like you don't belong behind the wheel of cars like this." Dawson's taser buzzed inches from her, the electric snap louder than the passing traffic. "Don't look away," he hissed, gripping her chin. "I want you to remember who owns this road." When he cocked his fist to strike, Alexis's punch connected first, sharp and explosive, freezing every witness mid-breath. None of them knew they'd just swung on a Delta Force commander. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Commander Alexis Ward eased her SUV down the winding Georgia highway, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows through the pine trees. The drive from her mother's house usually brought her peace, a rare moment of quiet after years of classified missions. But today, something felt off. In her rearview mirror, 2 patrol cars had been following her for the past 15 minutes, hanging back just enough to make their presence known. Her trained instincts kicked in as she maintained a steady speed, hands relaxed, but ready at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. The cruisers suddenly accelerated, their engines roaring as they split apart, one cutting in front, while the other boxed her in from behind. The lead car swerved sharply, forcing her to brake hard. Her SUV lurched to a stop on the shoulder, gravel crunching under the tires. "Keep your hands where we can see them!" Deputy Dawson's voice boomed through a megaphone. He emerged from the lead car, hand already on his holster. Deputy Riker approached from the other side, his face twisted in a sneer. Alexis lowered her window just 3 inches, enough to communicate, but maintain protection. "Is there a problem, officers?" Dawson's face reddened as he stormed up to her window. "When a woman like you drives a car this nice, it's stolen. Get out before we remove you ourselves." Her jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "This is my vehicle. I have registration and— Did I ask you to talk?" Dawson grabbed her door handle, yanking it open. "Out! Now!" Years of combat training screamed at her to react, but Alexis forced herself to move slowly, deliberately. She stepped out with her hands raised slightly, her military-honed senses cataloging every detail. Dawson's aggressive stance, Riker's position behind her, the third officer now approaching from the backup car. "Face the vehicle, legs spread." Dawson grabbed her shoulder, shoving her hard against the SUV. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. "This is unnecessary," she stated calmly. "I'm a military officer." Riker's knee slammed into her ribs, cutting off her words. "Shut your mouth. You people always have excuses." The search was nothing more than an excuse for brutality. Rough hands patted her down with intentional force, lingering inappropriately. Alexis's combat instincts flared with each violation, but she remained still, analyzing their positions, waiting. "Not so tough now, are you?" Dawson twisted her arm behind her back, pushing it up until pain shot through her shoulder. "Time to learn some respect." The third officer circled around, cracking his knuckles. "These types never learn respect until you teach it to them." Alexis felt the cold metal of a taser press against her neck. Dawson's breath was hot on her ear as he growled, "Maybe this will help the lesson stick." "You really don't want to do that," she said softly, her tone carrying a weight of absolute certainty. Dawson laughed. "Oh yeah? Watch me." The taser crackled to life. In that instant, everything changed. Before the electrodes could make contact, Alexis moved. Her elbow shot backward with crushing force, catching Dawson in the solar plexus. As he doubled over, she pivoted, using his momentum to throw him face first into the SUV's hood. Riker lunged, reaching for his baton. Alexis dropped low, sweeping his legs out with a practiced move that sent him crashing to the asphalt. The third officer charged in, but she was already moving. She caught his wild punch, redirected his energy, and sent him flipping over her hip. He landed hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. Dawson staggered up, blood streaming from his nose. He grabbed for his weapon, but Alexis was faster. 2 precise strikes, one to his wrist, another to his knee, left him howling on the ground. Riker tried to get her in a chokehold from behind. She responded with fluid efficiency, gripping his arm and throwing her weight forward. He flew over her shoulder, landing on the hood with a heavy thud that left a deep dent in the metal. The third officer had managed to get to his feet, but the fear in his eyes showed he knew he was outmatched. He rushed her anyway, driven by desperation and wounded pride. Alexis met his charge with controlled violence, a combination of strikes that left him sprawled beside his colleagues. In less than 30 seconds, all 3 officers lay groaning on the pavement. None had managed to land a single effective blow. Alexis stood straight, her breathing calm and measured, as the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She stood her ground, knowing this confrontation was far from over. The wailing sirens grew louder, but she remained perfectly still, her military bearing evident in every line of her posture. Dawson tried to push himself up, spitting blood onto the asphalt. You're gonna regret this." "No," Alexis replied quietly, watching the first backup units appear on the horizon. "I'm not the one who's going to have regrets about today." The sun was sinking lower now, painting the sky in deep oranges and reds. The same Georgia highway that had promised a peaceful drive home had become a battlefield, one that would soon draw more combatants. As the sirens grew closer, Alexis stood ready, knowing that this was only the beginning of a war she never wanted but would not back down from. Lieutenant Briggs's cruiser screeched to a halt at the scene, its headlights cutting through the growing dusk. The car door slammed with enough force to make the younger officers flinch. Briggs emerged like a storm cloud, his face purple with rage as he surveyed his injured men scattered across the asphalt. "What in God's name happened here?" he bellowed, his voice echoing off the pine trees. His eyes locked onto Alexis, who stood perfectly still, her military bearing unchanged. Dawson pushed himself to his knees, still wheezing. She attacked us, Lieutenant. We were conducting a routine stop and—" "Routine?" Alexis's voice cut through the air like steel. "You dragged me from my vehicle without cause, assaulted me, and attempted to tase me." Briggs stormed toward her, his hand white-knuckled around his baton. "You shut your mouth. I've got 3 good officers down because of you." "Good officers don't assault civilians," Alexis replied evenly. The baton came whistling through the air without warning. Most people would have been caught completely off guard, but Alexis had seen the tension in his shoulder, the slight shift in his weight. She stepped inside the arc of his swing, deflecting the baton with her forearm while staying just out of his reach. Briggs snarled, launching into a series of wild strikes. Each attack met empty air as Alexis moved with practiced efficiency. She didn't attack. She simply wasn't where his baton tried to be. Her control was perfect, her movements precise. "Stand still!" Briggs roared, his face growing redder with each failed attempt. "Like your officers made me stand still." Alexis's voice remained calm, even as she redirected another blow. While they kicked me, searched me, threatened me. A small crowd had gathered on the roadside. Cell phones recorded everything, their screens glowing in the deepening twilight. Briggs noticed them, and his fury doubled. "Get those phones," he ordered. "Confiscate every device. This is an active crime scene." Officers who had arrived as backup moved toward the witnesses, but their attention kept dragging back to Alexis. They'd seen what she'd done to their colleagues. None wanted to be next. Briggs launched another attack, this time aiming for her knees. Alexis caught the baton mid-swing. For a moment, they stood locked together, his raw anger against her disciplined strength. Then she twisted, using his own momentum to send him stumbling forward. The baton clattered to the pavement. She could have ended him there. One strike to the back of his head, another to his kidney. He'd left himself completely open. Instead, she stepped back, hands raised slightly. "That's enough, Lieutenant. We both know this stop was illegal." "Illegal?" Briggs straightened up, trying to mask his heavy breathing. "The only thing illegal here is assaulting police officers. Take her down, now!" The backup officers hesitated, looking at their fallen colleagues, then at Alexis's calm stance. Fear warred with duty on their faces. "I won't resist," Alexis said clearly, keeping her hands visible. "But everyone here knows what really happened." Two officers finally approached, their movements stiff with tension. They grabbed her arms roughly, but she didn't fight as they pulled them behind her back. The handcuffs clicked shut with unnecessary force. "You're under arrest for assault on law enforcement officers, resisting arrest, and attempted murder," Briggs spat, retrieving his baton. He stepped close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have no idea what you've just started." As they led her to a patrol car, Alexis watched Briggs directing his men. "Secure the scene. I want every phone, every camera, and someone find out what happened to our dash cam footage." The drive to the county station was tense. Alexis sat silently in the back, observing everything through the cage partition. The officers up front kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, their nervousness evident in every jerky movement. At the station, she was processed with deliberate slowness. Each step seemed designed to maximize discomfort and humiliation. Through it all, she maintained her composure, gathering intelligence. She noted which officers avoided eye contact, which ones seemed uncomfortable with the situation, and which ones followed Briggs's lead without question. From her position in booking, she could see Briggs in his office, orchestrating the cover-up. Officers cycled in and out, each leaving with specific tasks. One carried out the dash cam hard drives. Another began typing what would undoubtedly be a falsified report. "Computer systems acting up," an officer announced loudly. "Might lose some files tonight." Briggs's smile was cold. These things happen. Technology's never reliable. They placed her in a holding cell away from other inmates. The concrete walls were cold, the metal bench unyielding. Alexis sat with perfect posture, her training allowing her to find comfort in the discomfort. She'd survived worse conditions in far more hostile territories. Heavy footsteps approached. Briggs appeared at the bars, his face set in a smug expression. He'd regained his composure, apparently confident in his ability to control the narrative. "No judge in this county will believe your story," he said, tapping his baton against the bars. "It'll be your word against 3 respected officers. And now look at you, just another violent offender in a cell." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as 2 officers led Alexis through the booking area. Her muscles ached from the hard metal bench, but she kept her posture straight, her face composed. The night had been long, filled with the echoes of drunk tanks and the occasional shouts of other inmates. "Processing for release hearing," one officer announced, refusing to meet her eyes. The booking sergeant typed slowly, deliberately drawing out each click of the keyboard. Lieutenant Briggs burst through the door, a thick folder tucked under his arm. His smile was all teeth and malice. "Going nowhere just yet. Got some paperwork to file first." He slapped the folder down, spreading out multiple charge sheets. "Assault on law enforcement officers. That's 3 counts. Resisting arrest. And my personal favorite?" He held up the last form with theatrical flair. "Attempted murder." "That's absurd," Alexis said quietly, noting how several nearby officers shifted uncomfortably. "Is it?" Briggs's voice dripped with mock concern. "Officers Dawson and Riker tell a different story. How you exploded into violence during a routine stop. How you used military-style attacks that could have killed them. They're both in the hospital, by the way, thanks to you." "I want my phone call," Alexis said, "and I'm requesting legal counsel." "Oh, certainly. We're all about proper procedure here." Briggs's laugh was harsh. "Unlike some people who think they can assault officers without consequences." The phone call was brief. Within an hour, Harper Lane strode into the station, her heels clicking purposefully against the linoleum. Her sharp eyes took in everything: the officer's body language, the hastily posted duty roster changes, the way Briggs hovered near the booking desk. "I'm representing Commander Ward," Harper announced, her voice carrying. "I need to see all charging documents and incident reports immediately." Briggs tried to stare her down. "We're still processing the paperwork. These things take time." "Fascinating," Harper replied, "especially since you've already leaked details to the press. I saw the morning news segment about the dangerous veteran who attacked your officers." She turned to Alexis, speaking quietly but clearly. "This county has a history of protecting abusive officers. 8 similar incidents in the past year alone, all buried, but they've never tried to frame someone with your credentials." "The dash camera footage will clear this up," Alexis said. Harper's smile was grim. "Let me guess. Technical difficulties?" "Equipment malfunction," Briggs cut in. "Real shame. But we have 3 officers' sworn statements about her unprovoked attack. 3 identical statements, I'm sure," Harper replied. "We'll be requesting federal oversight. The pattern of civil rights violations in this department is too clear to ignore." While Harper argued with Briggs about bail conditions, Alexis observed the station's operations. She noted which officers handled evidence, which ones managed the computers, who had access to the security footage. Every detail was valuable intelligence. Through the station's windows, she could see news vans gathering. A reporter was already doing a live stand-up, gesturing toward the building. On the break room television, a local anchor read from a statement. Sources within the department described the suspect as mentally unstable, possibly suffering from PTSD. "They're pushing hard to control the narrative," Harper muttered, returning with release papers. "But they made mistakes. The timing of the report submissions, the missing footage, the escalation of charges, it all shows coordination. We can use that." The bail process took another 2 hours. Every signature was scrutinized, every form double-checked. Briggs watched it all, his presence a clear message of intimidation. Finally, Alexis stepped out into the harsh Georgia sun. News cameras swung toward her, but Harper stepped in front, blocking their shots. "No comments at this time. Any questions can be directed to my office." The drive home felt surreal. Every patrol car they passed seemed to slow down, officers craning their necks to look. Harper's words rang in Alexis's mind. They'll try to isolate you, make you feel watched. Don't let them. Her mother's neighborhood was buzzing with unusual activity. Neighbors stood in clusters, conversation dying as Alexis's car passed. A news van idled at the corner, the reporter perking up at her approach. "I'll have my team start building the case," Harper said as they pulled up to Alexis's house. "We'll need to move fast before they destroy more evidence. Are you sure you don't want to stay somewhere else?" "This is my home," Alexis replied simply. "I won't be driven out." Harper nodded, understanding. "Call me immediately if they try anything. And Commander, be careful. Men like Briggs are most dangerous when they're scared." Alexis walked up her front path, aware of the cameras watching, the neighbors peeking through curtains. Her phone buzzed continuously, news alerts, social media mentions, messages from unknown numbers. The local station's website already had a headline: "Violent Veteran Attacks Officers During Traffic Stop." Inside, her house was quiet, untouched. The silence felt like a refuge after the chaos of the jail. She closed the door, shutting out the world's noise, but her phone kept vibrating. Another alert. Police union demands maximum charges in officer assault case. Alexis placed the phone face down on her counter. They wanted her to feel overwhelmed, isolated, afraid, but they didn't understand who they were dealing with. She'd faced worse odds in places where there were no rules, no cameras, no legal recourse. Here, at least, there was a system, corrupt as it might be, that could be made to work. She looked at her reflection in the kitchen window, seeing the soldier she'd always been. No, she wouldn't be intimidated. Not by Briggs, not by his corrupt department, not by their media manipulation. They had started this fight thinking she was an easy target. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The morning sky hung low and threatening as Alexis backed out of her driveway. News vans had finally cleared out, but she spotted a patrol car parked 2 blocks down, poorly hidden behind a neighbor's oak tree. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. Her phone buzzed with a text from Harper. "Meet at office ASAP. Federal contact agreed to hear us." Alexis checked her mirrors, noting another cruiser that had pulled out behind her 3 turns back. They were getting sloppy with their surveillance, which meant they were getting desperate. The parking garage near Harper's downtown office loomed ahead, its concrete levels rising like a fortress in the gray morning light. Alexis chose the 3rd level, away from the scattered cars on the lower floors. As she pulled into a space, her trained instincts registered multiple details: the echo of boots on concrete, the reflection of movement in parked car windows, the deliberate positioning of vehicles near the exit ramp. She stepped out of her car, keys in hand. "I know you're here," she called out, her voice carrying across the empty level. "Let's skip the theatrics." 4 deputies emerged from behind pillars and vehicles. She recognized Deputy Slate from booking, his young face tight with nervous energy. The others were older, harder-looking. All carried batons, and their stance made it clear this wasn't an official visit. "Lieutenant said you might cause problems," the largest deputy growled, tapping his baton against his leg. "Said we should make sure you understand how things work around here. Before you meet those feds," another added, circling to her left. "Accidents happen in parking garages all the time, especially to people who don't know when to keep quiet." Alexis remained still, analyzing distances, positions, angles. They had planned this poorly, too spread out, too focused on blocking exits rather than coordinating their attack. Amateur mistakes that would cost them. "Last chance to walk away," she offered, knowing they wouldn't take it. Slate rushed in first, eager to prove himself. His baton swing was wide, telegraphed. Alexis stepped inside his reach, redirecting his momentum into a parked sedan. The impact dented the door and left him gasping. The others attacked together, but without coordination. Alexis moved between concrete pillars, using the structure itself as both shield and weapon. A baton struck concrete where her head had been. She grabbed the weapon, twisting it and its wielder into another deputy's charge. They collided hard, cursing and stumbling. Alexis seized the moment to disable Slate, who was trying to stand. A precise strike to his knee dropped him back down, followed by a controlled chop to the nerve cluster in his shoulder. He crumpled, conscious but unable to rejoin the fight. "Federal assault now," one deputy snarled, drawing a taser. "You're just making it worse." Alexis caught his wrist as the taser sparked, directing the electrodes into his partner's chest. The man convulsed and dropped. Before the taser-wielding deputy could react, she slammed his arm against a pillar, sending the weapon clattering across the concrete. The largest deputy bull-rushed her, trying to pin her against a car. Alexis used his momentum, adding to it with a hip throw that sent him skidding across the rough surface. He rolled to his feet, spitting blood, and charged again. This time she met him with his fallen partner's baton, striking pressure points in rapid succession. He went down hard, clutching his paralyzed arm. The remaining deputy backed away, fumbling for his radio. Alexis closed the distance in 2 steps, trapped his hand before he could key the mic, and disarmed him with a wrist lock that left him kneeling in pain. "Stay down," she ordered, applying just enough pressure to make her point clear. "Unless you want to explain to the medics exactly how you dislocated your own shoulder." The garage echoed with groans and ragged breathing. Alexis retrieved her phone, documenting the scene methodically. The weapons they'd dropped, the positions of the deputies, the damage to vehicles. She sent everything to Harper with a quick text. "Attempted assault in parking garage. 4 deputies. Need cleanup." Slate tried to speak through pain-clenched teeth. "You don't understand. He'll kill us if we don't stop you." "Then you should have thought harder about who you work for," Alexis replied, checking each deputy's condition. None had life-threatening injuries, but they wouldn't be swinging batons again any time soon. Footsteps echoed from the lower level, civilians drawn by the noise. Someone was already on the phone with emergency services, their voice carrying, "There's fighting in the parking garage. Send police!" Alexis collected the dropped weapons, arranging them clearly for photographs. More evidence of their attempted ambush. More proof of the department's desperation. The first hints of sirens wailed in the distance as she walked calmly toward the exit ramp. The deputies remained where they had fallen, perhaps finally understanding the magnitude of their mistake. Their groans and curses followed her down the concrete passages. She moved steadily, unhurried, her breathing controlled. The garage's shadows gave way to gray daylight. The sirens grew louder, approaching from multiple directions. Soon, this level would be swarming with first responders, and more of Briggs's corrupted force. But she had accomplished what she needed. The attack was documented. The deputies were neutralized without permanent injury. And most importantly, they had proven how far the department would go to silence her. The rising wind carried the sound of more sirens as Alexis emerged onto the street. Red and blue lights reflected off nearby buildings. She took out her phone to update Harper on her delayed arrival, her fingers steady as she typed. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Harper's office windows as Alexis sat across from her attorney's desk. Files and photographs from the parking garage incident were spread between them, each image a testament to the morning's violence. "They're spinning this faster than I expected," Harper said, tapping a freshly printed news article. Look at this headline: Unstable veteran attacks officers in parking structure. They're painting you as someone who seeks out confrontation. Alexis leaned forward, scanning the article. Her jaw tightened at the quotes from anonymous department sources describing her as a threat to public safety. They moved quickly. Briggs is smarter than he looks, Harper admitted, shuffling through more papers. He's already been to the DA's office. My contact there says he spent 2 hours with Marston this morning, right after the garage incident. Let me guess. They're expediting the charges? Harper nodded grimly. Marston's calling it a matter of public safety. They're trying to fast-track your prosecution before we can gather more evidence of their corruption. Alexis stood, pacing the length of Harper's office. The carpet muffled her steps as she moved past the law degrees and civic awards adorning the walls. They're desperate. Those deputies this morning. They were scared. Not just of me, but of Briggs. One of them said Briggs would kill them if they failed. That tracks with what I've been hearing. Harper pulled out another file. 3 complaints in the last year about officers claiming they were forced to falsify reports. All dismissed, of course. But there's a pattern of intimidation within the department. We need to go higher, Alexis said, stopping at the window. Below, pedestrians moved along the sidewalk, unaware of the corruption festering in their community. Federal oversight. I have a contact at the Justice Department, Daniel Cross. He specializes in department-wide corruption cases. Harper picked up her phone. He's been looking for a way into this jurisdiction for months. Your case might be exactly what he needs. Make the call, Alexis agreed. But Briggs will retaliate as soon as he knows we're reaching out to the feds. He's already retaliating. Harper pulled up an email on her computer. Just got this from a courthouse clerk. Briggs called an emergency meeting with his senior deputies an hour ago. Closed door, no records. Planning their next move. My source says Briggs was livid. Kept talking about containing you before you could do more damage. One deputy suggested backing off, letting things cool down. Harper's expression darkened. Briggs threatened his family. Alexis absorbed this, her military training helping her process the escalating threat. He's showing weakness. Strong leaders don't need to threaten their own people. But wounded animals are the most dangerous, Harper warned. And Briggs has the whole department acting like his personal attack dogs. A knock at the door interrupted them. Harper's assistant entered with more files. These just came from traffic court. They're issuing citations against Ms. Ward's vehicle. Expired registration, improper equipment, missing plates. All fabricated, Harper said, scanning the documents. They're trying to build a paper trail, make you look like a chronic offender. Small-time intimidation, Alexis observed. They're throwing everything they can think of, hoping something sticks. It's more than that. Harper spread out the citations. They're establishing a pattern. Each citation gives them an excuse to pull you over. They're setting up future confrontations. Alexis studied the papers, noting how each violation had been carefully crafted to appear legitimate. They're learning. This morning they tried brute force. Now they're using bureaucracy as a weapon. Which is why we need federal involvement immediately. Harper reached for her phone again. Cross can freeze these citations, prevent them from filing more. But we have to move fast. How long until he can get here? If I reach him today? Maybe 48 hours. But that's 2 days Briggs can use to escalate things further. Alexis nodded, already formulating contingency plans. I'll be ready. They won't catch me off guard again. There's something else. Harper hesitated, then pulled out one final document. Briggs filed a motion to revoke your bail, claiming you're a danger to his officers. Judge Whitman is reviewing it now. Whitman? Isn't he the one who golfs with Marston? Every Sunday. Harper's expression was grim. The system here is a closed loop, Alexis. They protect each other, cover for each other. Breaking that loop won't be easy. It never is. Alexis gathered her things, preparing to leave. But systems like this have weak points. We just have to find them. The drive home was tense, Alexis constantly checking her mirrors for patrol cars. But the department seemed to be keeping their distance. For now. As she pulled into her driveway, the setting sun painted her house in deep orange and shadow. The citations were taped to her front door, multiple sheets fluttering in the evening breeze. A pointed reminder that they could reach her anywhere, even here. Alexis removed them one by one, noting how official they looked, how carefully they'd been crafted to appear legitimate. Standing in her doorway, she studied her quiet street. Somewhere out there, Briggs was planning his next move. More deputies were being pressured into corruption. More innocent people were at risk of becoming targets. What had started as a simple traffic stop had evolved into something much larger. This wasn't just about defending herself anymore. It was about exposing a system that had rotted from within, about protecting a community that didn't even realize how deeply the corruption ran. The evening air grew cooler as darkness crept in. Alexis stood motionless, citations in hand, feeling the weight of the fight ahead. Dismantling an entire corrupt system wouldn't be quick or easy, but she had faced worse odds before. The neon beer signs cast a sickly glow across the parking lot of O'Malley's bar as Alexis pulled in. The sun was setting behind the building, painting the sky in deep purples and oranges. She'd chosen this time carefully. Shift change meant maximum off-duty officers would be present. O'Malley's had been a cop bar for decades. The wooden sign above the door was weathered, barely legible in the growing darkness. Alexis took a deep breath, centered herself, and pushed through the heavy door. The effect was immediate. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. The place reeked of stale beer and hostility. At least 15 off-duty officers occupied various tables and bar stools, all now laser-focused on her presence. Alexis moved with deliberate calm to the bar, feeling the weight of their stares. The bartender, a heavy-set man with graying temples, approached with visible reluctance. "Water," she said simply. He placed a glass in front of her without comment, then retreated to the far end of the bar, where a cluster of officers huddled, speaking in low voices. Alexis didn't turn around. She didn't need to. The mirror behind the bar gave her a perfect view of the room. Deputy Riker sat at a corner table with 4 other officers, his face flushed from alcohol. His voice carried clearly across the now quiet space. "Told Briggs not to worry about it. Judge Whitman's got his back. Been that way since they were rookies together." One of his companions glanced nervously in Alexis's direction. Riker laughed, louder now, clearly wanting her to hear. "What's she gonna do? That dash cam footage is gone. Briggs made sure of it himself, stayed late to wipe everything clean. No evidence means her word against ours, and we all know how that plays out in Whitman's court." Alexis took a slow sip of water, memorizing details. The mirror showed 3 officers by the pool table beginning to move, positioning themselves between her and the exit. Their movements were clumsy. They'd been drinking heavily. She stood, turning to face Riker's table. The bar grew even quieter, tension crackling in the air. Each step toward his table echoed against the wooden floor. "That footage showed everything, didn't it?" she asked calmly. "That's why Briggs was so eager to destroy it." Riker's face twisted with anger. "You got some nerve coming in here." Just confirming facts, Alexis said. Like how Judge Whitman takes bribes to dismiss cases against corrupt officers. One of the drunk officers from the pool table grabbed her shoulder. Time for you to leave. Alexis didn't move. Take your hand off me. Or what? A second officer moved in, breath heavy with whiskey. You're outnumbered here. Last warning, Alexis said quietly. The third officer lunged, trying to grab her arm. Alexis shifted, redirecting his momentum. He crashed into a table, sending glasses shattering across the floor. The first officer swung a wild punch. She blocked it easily, using his own force to spin him into the second attacker. They stumbled, cursing. One grabbed a chair, swinging it like a club. Alexis stepped inside his reach. The chair splintered against the bar as she took him down with a precise strike to the solar plexus. He crumpled, gasping. The remaining officers attacked together, coordinating despite their drunkenness. Alexis moved with fluid efficiency, never wasting motion. One swing left a dent in the wall where her head had been a moment before. She countered with an elbow strike that dropped the attacker to his knees. The last officer backed away, eyes wide with fear. Behind her, she heard chairs scraping as other cops stood. But no one moved to help. They'd seen what happened to the first three. The footage, Alexis said, turning back to Riker. Briggs deleted it personally? Riker's face was pale now, the alcohol bravado gone. You're crazy, coming here like this. Answer the question. Yeah, he spat. He wiped everything. Security footage, too. Spent 2 hours making sure nothing survived. Happy now? Extremely. Alexis surveyed the room. Several officers had phones out, recording. Perfect. More evidence for Harper. Anyone else want to add anything about Judge Whitman's special relationship with the department? Silence answered her. The 3 officers she'd disabled were still on the floor, moaning softly. Behind the bar, the bartender had disappeared, probably calling for backup. Then we're done here. She moved toward the exit, maintaining awareness of every person in the room. No one tried to stop her. They watched with a mixture of fear and fury as she reached the door. The night air felt cool against her skin as she stepped outside. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. She could hear sirens in the distance, the cavalry finally responding to the bartender's call. But they were too late. She had what she needed. Alexis pulled out her phone, already composing a message to Harper about Briggs personally destroying evidence and Judge Whitman's corruption. The pieces were falling into place. Each confrontation revealed more of their network, more proof of how deep the rot went. The bar door opened behind her. A voice called out, thick with pain and rage. "This isn't over!" She didn't bother turning around. Their threats were empty now, born of desperation and wounded pride. The real fight wasn't with drunk officers in a bar. It was with the system that protected them, the corrupt officials who enabled their behavior. Alexis got into her car, watching in the rearview mirror as more officers stumbled out of O'Malley's. They looked lost, their illusion of untouchable power shattered along with that chair. She started the engine, already focusing on the next step. The evidence was destroyed, but now she had witnesses who'd admitted to its destruction. It wasn't ideal, but Harper would know how to use it. The sirens grew louder as she pulled away from the bar, leaving behind a scene of broken furniture, bruised egos, and the first real cracks in the department's wall of silence. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty road as Alexis headed toward Harper's office. Her phone, propped on the dashboard, displayed a carefully organized summary of last night's revelations at O'Malley's. The recorded confessions about Briggs and Judge Whitman would blow this case wide open. A flash of white and blue in her rearview mirror caught her attention. A patrol SUV had appeared behind her, following uncomfortably close. Alexis checked her speed, exactly at the limit. The SUV's grille filled her mirror, close enough that she could make out the driver's face. Officer Matthews, one of Briggs's most loyal attack dogs. "Here we go," she muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. The patrol vehicle swerved into the oncoming lane, engine roaring as it pulled alongside her. Matthews' partner Reynolds sat in the passenger seat, both men wearing expressions of pure hatred. Alexis maintained her speed, watching as Matthews jerked his wheel toward her. The first impact was tentative, a warning bump that made her tires squeal. She countered with a defensive driving technique, maintaining control while appearing to struggle. "Come on," she said quietly. "Show me what you're really here for." As if hearing her challenge, Matthews slammed his SUV into her car with full force. The impact sent shudders through her vehicle. But Alexis was ready. She'd already activated her phone's camera, mounted to capture everything. The road ahead curved sharply to the right, bordered by a steep ditch. Matthews accelerated, trying to pin her against the guardrail. Instead of fighting it, Alexis tapped her brakes. The patrol SUV shot forward, overshooting its mark. "Amateur hour," she said, watching Matthews struggle with his steering. His vehicle fishtailed, tires leaving black streaks on the asphalt. Reynolds grabbed the dashboard, panic clear on his face. Alexis executed a perfect pursuit intervention technique, a precision tap to the patrol SUV's rear quarter panel. The effect was devastating. Matthews overcompensated, sending the vehicle into an uncontrollable spin. The patrol SUV careened across both lanes, hit the shoulder, and rolled once before settling in the ditch. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. Alexis pulled over, positioning her car to block any escape routes. Matthews kicked his door open, stumbling out with his hand on his holster. "You're dead!" he screamed, but his voice shook. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. "Stay where you are," Alexis called out, phone recording everything. "Keep your hands visible." Reynolds emerged from the passenger side, already reaching for his radio. "Unit 47, officer down!" Alexis moved with practiced efficiency. 2 quick strikes dropped Matthews before he could draw his weapon. Reynolds backed away, fumbling with his radio. "Shots fired! Shots!" She closed the distance in 3 steps, sweeping his legs and pinning him face down. "No shots fired," she said calmly, securing his arms. "Just like there was no reason for you to try running me off the road." "Briggs will kill you for this," Matthews groaned from where he lay. "Add that threat to the recording," Alexis replied, checking both officers for serious injuries. Finding none, she used their own handcuffs to secure them to their vehicle's push bar. The whole encounter had lasted less than 2 minutes. Alexis returned to her car, reviewing the footage. Every second was clear. The unprovoked attack, their attempts to cause a fatal crash, and Matthews's final threat. She created multiple backups, sending copies to Harper and the federal tip line she'd been given. Steam continued rising from the patrol SUV's mangled hood. The front axle was clearly broken, and fluid leaked steadily into the dirt. Both officers stared at her with a mixture of hatred and fear as she prepared to leave. "You know what the difference is between us?" she asked them. "I could have killed you both easily. Instead, you'll live to face consequences." She nodded toward her phone. "Everything's recorded. Your careers are over." "Briggs owns this county," Reynolds spat. "You got nothing." "Look around," Alexis said. "Your vehicle's destroyed. You're handcuffed to your own bumper. Your attack failed completely. Still think Briggs is winning? Neither officer responded. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Likely their backup, finally responding to the aborted radio call. Alexis got into her car, checking the time. She'd still make her meeting with Harper, now with even more evidence of the department's desperation. "Backup's coming," Matthews called out weakly. "You won't get far." Alexis started her engine. "I'm not running. I'll be at my lawyer's office, filing assault charges against both of you. Feel free to send more officers. We'll add witness intimidation to the list." She pulled away smoothly, watching in her mirror as the patrol SUV's hood released another cloud of steam. The morning sun caught the smoke, making it glow like a signal fire. Let them come, she thought. Each attack only proved how corrupt they were, how far they'd go to protect their power. The sirens grew louder behind her, but Alexis maintained exactly the speed limit. Her phone buzzed. Harper had received the footage and was already preparing motions. The federal tip line had also responded, requesting an immediate interview. The road stretched ahead, empty now except for the approaching police cars in her mirror. Their desperate attack had failed, just like every other attempt to silence her. More importantly, they'd proven exactly what she'd been saying. This wasn't about one traffic stop or a few bad officers. This was about a system so corrupt that its members would attempt murder in broad daylight, confident they'd face no consequences. Alexis checked her mirror one last time. The smoking patrol SUV was barely visible now, but she could imagine Matthews and Reynolds trying to explain this disaster to their arriving colleagues. Their story wouldn't match the video evidence. Their careers, built on bullying and corruption, were finally crumbling. She turned onto the highway leading to Harper's office, ready to add this latest attack to their growing mountain of evidence. Behind her, more sirens joined the chorus, the sound of a corrupt system in its death throes, lashing out with increasing desperation. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Harper's downtown office as Alexis spread printouts, photos, and video files across the conference table. Her morning confrontation with Matthews and Reynolds had left her jacket dusty, but she hadn't taken time to change. This evidence needed to be organized immediately. "They're getting bolder," Harper said, examining stills from the patrol SUV attack. "Attempting murder in broad daylight? Briggs must be desperate." Alexis nodded, pulling up the bar footage on her laptop. "Listen to this part again." She played a clip of Riker's drunken boasting about Judge Whitman's connection to Briggs. The audio was clear, despite the background noise. "That's the missing link we needed," Harper said, making notes. "Proves the corruption goes beyond the department." She paused as someone knocked on the office door. "That should be our federal contact." Investigator Daniel Cross entered, his suit crisp despite the Georgia heat. He carried a thick folder and wore an expression of controlled anger. "Commander Ward," he said, extending his hand, "I've spent the morning reviewing your evidence. I apologize it took a murder attempt to get our attention." "Just call me Alexis," she replied, studying his face for any sign of departmental loyalty. She found none, just professional determination. "I've opened an official inquiry," Cross said, laying out his own files. "Your documentation is exceptional. Military precision in the notes, multiple camera angles, clear chain of evidence." He tapped the photos of her original traffic stop injuries. "But it's the pattern that concerns me most. This isn't random brutality. It's systematic." Harper pulled up more files on her computer. "We've identified similar cases going back 5 years, all involving Lieutenant Briggs or officers under his command, all targeting black drivers, all with mysteriously missing evidence." Except this time, Alexis added, they picked someone who could fight back and knew how to document everything. Cross nodded grimly. My team visited the station this morning. The panic was immediate. Several officers suddenly requested vacation time. Others started shredding files until we stopped them. Briggs was there? Harper asked. Left as soon as he saw our badges, but not before we secured the computer systems. Cross opened his folder, revealing screenshots of internal emails. Your traffic stop wasn't spontaneous, Commander. They tracked your vehicle for days, planning the confrontation. Briggs personally selected the officers involved. Alexis felt her jaw tighten. Because I'm black and drive a nice car? Partially, but also because they'd observed you visiting your mother. They assumed having family in their jurisdiction would make you vulnerable to pressure. Cross's expression hardened. They've used similar tactics before, threatening relatives to force victims into silence. Not this time, Alexis said quietly, her voice carrying absolute certainty. Harper's phone buzzed. She checked it and frowned. Briggs is already responding to the federal presence. He's called an emergency press conference for this afternoon. Let me guess, Alexis said. More claims about my military aggression issues? Worse, Harper replied. He's trying to paint you as a domestic terrorist. Says your combat training makes you a threat to public safety. She showed them the press release. He's demanding federal authorities arrest you, not investigate him. Cross shook his head. Classic deflection. But it won't work. We have his departmental emails discussing how to provoke you into a reaction. He wanted violence. He just didn't expect you'd survive it and document everything. They spent the next hour reviewing evidence for the preliminary hearing. Cross confirmed the federal investigation would take precedence over local charges, effectively neutralizing Judge Whitman's influence. Every new piece of evidence revealed deeper corruption. Falsified reports, missing dashcam footage, coordinated harassment campaigns against other victims. The roadside attack this morning was sloppy, Cross noted, watching the video again. They're unraveling, making mistakes, which makes them more dangerous, Alexis said. Men like Briggs would rather destroy everything than lose control. Harper's assistant interrupted with more news. Multiple deputies had walked off the job, refusing to follow Briggs's increasingly erratic orders. Others were calling the federal tip line, offering to testify about years of misconduct. The thin blue line is cracking, Cross said. Once officers realize federal charges are possible, loyalty to Briggs becomes a liability. He won't accept that, Harper warned. His whole identity is built on power, on being untouchable. Then we make sure every attack backfires, Alexis said firmly. Every threat becomes evidence. Every attempt to silence us proves our case. They prepared for the preliminary hearing, scheduled for the following week. Harper organized witness statements from other victims. Cross added federal charges to the growing list of violations. Alexis provided tactical analysis of each confrontation, proving the escalating pattern of violence. One concern, Cross said as they finished. Briggs still has supporters in the department. They're watching your movements, logging your contacts. Standard intimidation tactics. Let them watch, Alexis replied. Every surveillance attempt is another civil rights violation to document. The meeting concluded with a clear strategy. Harper would handle legal proceedings, while Cross expanded the federal investigation. Alexis would continue gathering evidence while maintaining her defensive posture against further attacks. Stay alert, Cross advised as they prepared to leave. Briggs is the type to take this personally. His power structure is crumbling, and he knows it. Alexis gathered her files, noting how the evidence now filled multiple boxes. Each attempt to silence her had only made their case stronger. The very tactics meant to protect their corruption were exposing it instead. Harper walked her to the elevator. "We'll need you back tomorrow to prepare for depositions. My security team can escort you." "I'll be fine," Alexis assured her. They've learned direct confrontation doesn't work. The elevator opened to the lobby, its mirrored walls reflecting her determined expression. Through the glass doors, she could see the street clearly. An unmarked Crown Victoria sat across the intersection, its occupants poorly concealing their surveillance. Alexis straightened her jacket, checking that her phone was still recording. Let them watch, she thought. Let them see what real strength looks like. Every moment they spent monitoring her was another moment their corrupt system weakened. The department's desperation was becoming more obvious with each passing hour. Their power, built on decades of unchecked authority, was finally facing real consequences. And Alexis intended to see those consequences through to the end. The wooden benches creaked under the weight of spectators as Alexis entered the crowded courtroom. Every seat was filled, with people standing against the back wall. News of federal involvement had drawn reporters, civil rights activists, and countless citizens who'd experienced similar abuse. Harper walked beside her, briefcase filled with evidence. Investigator Cross sat at a separate table, his presence adding federal weight to the proceedings. Across the aisle, Lieutenant Briggs and his department lawyer projected false confidence. Judge Marshall entered, and the room stood. Unlike Judge Whitman, who'd recused himself after his connections to Briggs emerged, Marshall had a reputation for independence. Her expression revealed nothing as she reviewed the morning's motions. "We'll begin with the federal evidence," Marshall announced, nodding to Investigator Cross. Cross approached the bench with a digital recorder and transcripts. "Your Honor, during our investigation of missing dashcam footage, we recovered backup audio from officer body microphones. Department policy requires these recordings be preserved for 90 days. They were deliberately hidden in a miscategorized archive." Briggs shifted in his chair as Cross connected the audio system. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. "The first recording is from Deputy Dawson's microphone, time-stamped to the initial traffic stop," Cross explained. The courtroom fell silent as Dawson's voice filled the space. "Look at this one. Driving Daddy's car, I bet. These people always trying to show off what they ain't earned." Riker's voice followed. "Time to teach some respect. Been too long since we had a good one." The racial slurs that followed made several spectators gasp. The recording captured their approaching footsteps, the aggressive commands, and most crucially, their discussion of using force before any interaction occurred. Dawson, "Watch this. Gonna make her squirm." Riker, "Just don't leave marks where cameras can see. You know the drill." Harper stood. "Your Honor, this proves premeditation. The officers plan to use excessive force before any contact with my client." The department lawyer objected, claiming the recordings could have been altered. Judge Marshall overruled immediately. "The Federal Forensics Lab has authenticated these recordings," Cross stated. "We have continuous audio from multiple officers' devices." He played another clip, the moment they dragged Alexis from her vehicle. The sounds of impact were clear, along with their taunting comments about putting her in her place. The recording captured Alexis's calm warnings, followed by the distinct buzz of Dawson's taser. Several jurors visibly recoiled at the officer's language and threats. Even Judge Marshall's neutral expression cracked slightly. "The prosecution has charged Commander Ward with assaulting officers and resisting arrest," Harper addressed the court. These recordings prove she acted in self-defense against an orchestrated attack motivated by racial bias. Briggs's face had turned deep red. His hands gripped the table edge until his knuckles went white. Cross presented more evidence. Internal emails showing the department's pattern of targeting black drivers, testimony from officers who'd quit rather than participate in Briggs's schemes, data proving systematic evidence destruction. Your Honor, the department lawyer attempted, these recordings were obtained without proper... They were obtained through standard federal investigation protocols. Judge Marshall cut him off. And they revealed deeply disturbing conduct by law enforcement officers. Alexis watched Briggs carefully. His composure was crumbling. The carefully constructed image of authority he'd maintained for decades was dissolving in real time. Judge Marshall reviewed the transcripts again. Based on this evidence, I'm dismissing the charges of assaulting an officer and resisting arrest. Commander Ward's actions clearly constitute self-defense against excessive force and civil rights violations. A wave of whispers swept through the courtroom. Briggs shot to his feet. "This is nonsense," he shouted. "She attacked my officers. We can't let these people—" "Lieutenant Briggs," Judge Marshall's voice cracked like a whip. "Control yourself, or be held in contempt. Your choice of words is telling." Harper stood. "Your Honor, given the clear evidence of civil rights violations, we move to dismiss all remaining charges against my client." "So ordered," Marshall replied, without hesitation. "Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division for additional investigation." The gallery erupted in murmurs. Years of unchecked abuse were finally facing consequences. Alexis remained composed, but inside she felt the first real relief since that night on the highway. Briggs stormed out, shouldering past reporters. His lawyer trailed behind, already distancing himself from the collapse. "Commander," Judge Marshall addressed her directly, "I apologize for the ordeal you've endured. This court failed in its duty to protect citizens from abuse of power." Alexis nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Your Honor." After the judge departed, well-wishers surrounded Alexis and Harper. Cross joined them, his usually stern expression softened slightly. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. "The federal investigation will continue. More victims are coming forward." "Good," Alexis replied. "The whole system needs exposure." They made their way through the courthouse halls, past cameras and microphones. Harper handled the press questions while Alexis moved steadily toward the exit. The noon sun felt warm and cleansing as she stepped outside. For the first time since the traffic stop, she felt the weight lifting. Not gone entirely. There would be more battles ahead. But the momentum had shifted. Truth was finally breaking through decades of silence and intimidation. Standing on the courthouse steps, Alexis watched citizens gathering, sharing stories of their own encounters with departmental abuse. Each person who spoke up added another crack to the wall of impunity Briggs had built. Harper joined her outside. The judge's ruling opens the door for civil suits. Other victims can now come forward with solid legal precedent. Alexis nodded, feeling the warm breeze and watching more community members arrive to show support. The system's power had always depended on isolation, making each victim feel alone and helpless. That isolation was breaking down, replaced by unity and determination. The sunset painted long shadows across Alexis's driveway as she pulled in, her shoulders finally relaxing after weeks of tension. The courthouse victory felt substantial, like the first real crack in Briggs's armor. She collected her jacket and briefcase, allowing herself a small smile. Inside, she kicked off her shoes and poured a glass of water, replaying Judge Marshall's words. The validation felt good, but more importantly, it opened doors for others to come forward. Maybe the system could change, even if slowly. Her phone buzzed, her mother's number lighting up the screen, but it wasn't her mother's voice that came through. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Taylor, speaking in panicked tones. "Alexis, they're here! 4 patrol cars! They're going into your mama's house right now." The glass slipped from Alexis's hand, shattering on the kitchen tile. "What? Who's there?" "The sheriff's department. They're saying something about obstruction charges, evidence tampering. Your mama was just sitting on her porch. They're being so rough with her." Alexis was already moving, grabbing her keys. "Call Harper's office. Tell them exactly what's happening. I'm on my way." She hadn't made it to her car when her phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, text messages, social media tags, all carrying variations of the same headline. Delta Force commander's violent past exposed. Questions about mental stability. Her hands went cold as she opened the first link. There was her service photo, alongside carefully selected mission details that had been twisted to paint her as unstable and dangerous. Classified information about her counterterrorism work had been leaked and deliberately misrepresented. The article quoted anonymous department sources describing her as trained in lethal tactics and potentially unstable from combat stress. They'd even dug up the names of teammates she'd lost, using their deaths to suggest she harbored deep-seated rage issues. Her phone rang again. Harper this time. "They're crucifying you on every channel," Harper said, without preamble. Briggs must have connections in military intelligence. This leak came from somewhere high up. "They have my mother." Alexis's voice was tight. 4 patrol cars at her house. "I know. I've got people heading there now. But Alexis, this is coordinated. They're trying to destroy your credibility before—" A loud knocking interrupted them. Through her window, Alexis saw camera crews assembling on her lawn. News vans were double parking along her quiet street. "They're here too," she told Harper. "Don't engage. Don't answer anything. They're trying to provoke a reaction they can use against you." The knocking became pounding. Camera flashes strobed through her windows as reporters pressed against the glass, shouting questions. "Commander Ward! Is it true you were discharged for excessive force? Did your combat experience make you attack those officers? Are you currently under psychiatric care?" Alexis moved away from the windows, her tactical training kicking in as she assessed sightlines and vulnerabilities. The house felt suddenly exposed, like a target under a spotlight. Her phone lit up with another call. Mrs. Taylor again. "They put her in handcuffs, Alexis." "Your mama's crying, but they won't let me near her. They're saying she destroyed evidence, but she ain't done nothing." Alexis's hands clenched. "Is she hurt?" They grabbed her arms so rough. She kept asking for her heart medicine, but they wouldn't let her get it. "Stay with her if you can. I'm sending my lawyer." More pounding at her door, more shouted questions. Her phone buzzed constantly with news alerts, each headline worse than the last. "Decorated commander or dangerous vigilante. Violence follows. Ward, pattern of aggressive incidents. Sources, Ward's unit suffered heavy losses under her command." She moved through her darkening house, switching off lights to make it harder for cameras to see inside. The reporter's questions became more pointed, more provocative. "Did losing your team make you snap? Were the officers right to fear for their safety? Should someone with your training be allowed to live freely?" Alexis's phone buzzed with a text from Harper. "Your mother's being processed at county jail. Briggs himself signed the warrant. Working on bail now." Another text followed. Warning. They're painting you as unstable. Want you to react badly. Don't give them anything. Alexis sank onto her couch in the darkness, feeling the walls closing in. Everything she'd built, every sacrifice she'd made, Briggs was twisting it all into ammunition. Her service, her losses, her dedication to protecting others. He'd turned them into weapons against her. The reporters outside kept shouting, their questions designed to wound. Did you enjoy hurting those officers like you hurt enemy combatants? How many people died under your command? Are you a danger to the public? She thought of her mother, terrified and alone in a jail cell, denied her medication, thought of her teammates, their memories being twisted into tabloid fodder, thought of every person Briggs had ever abused, knowing he believed himself untouchable. The darkness felt heavy as Alexis sat motionless, letting the truth settle in her chest. The system wouldn't stop. It would keep coming, keep hurting people she loved, keep twisting reality until she was destroyed. Unless she destroyed it first. The camera flashes continued outside, lighting up her living room in harsh bursts. But Alexis barely noticed them now. Her mind was already shifting, analyzing patterns and weaknesses, identifying pressure points in Briggs's network of corruption. She'd tried playing defense, tried working within the system. That approach had just put her mother in jail and turned her service into a scandal. The darkness wrapped around her like a tactical cloak as she sat absolutely still, letting the rage focus her thoughts into cold precision. She'd fought against systemic evil before. She knew how to dismantle hostile networks, and she'd never lost when the mission truly mattered. Morning sunlight sliced through Alexis's bedroom blinds, casting tiger-striped shadows across her bare walls. She hadn't slept, hadn't even tried. The night had been spent processing intel, mapping connections, identifying weak points in Briggs's network. Her mother was still in custody, denied bail on obviously trumped-up charges. The media circus continued outside, though the crowd had thinned to just 2 persistent news vans. Their presence didn't matter anymore. She was done playing defense. Alexis moved through her morning routine with mechanical precision. Cold shower, protein bar, black coffee. Her tactical mindset had fully engaged, treating this like any other hostile network that needed dismantling. She packed her evidence files into a secured briefcase, recordings, timestamps, witness statements, financial records she'd gathered through back channels. The reporters perked up as she emerged from her house, but she ignored their shouted questions. Their cameras followed her to her SUV, desperate for any reaction they could twist into controversy. She gave them nothing. 20 minutes later, she walked into Harper's office. The attorney was already there with Investigator Cross, both looking grave as they watched a morning news segment about Alexis's troubled military past. They're really pushing the unstable veteran angle, Harper said, muting the TV. Your mother's still being held without— I know where this goes next, Alexis interrupted, setting her briefcase on the desk. Briggs will keep escalating until someone dies, so we end it first. She pulled out her files, spreading them across Harper's desk in precise rows. Private prison corporations showing massive profit spikes every time Briggs's department conducts special enforcement periods. Traffic stop quotas targeting specific neighborhoods. Kickback patterns disguised as consulting fees. Cross picked up one of the documents, eyebrows rising. How did you get these financial records? I have contacts who owed me favors. Everything's authenticated. Alexis tapped another folder. 3 years of dash cam footage Briggs claimed was accidentally deleted. backed up on private servers, shows a clear pattern of targeted harassment and excessive force. Harper leaned forward. This is exactly what we need. But it's also incredibly dangerous. These corporations have serious political influence. They also have a serious paper trail, Alexis said. Names, dates, dollar amounts. Enough to trigger multiple federal investigations. She turned to Cross. That's where you come in. The investigator nodded slowly, still scanning the documents. This level of coordination between law enforcement and private prisons, it's systemic corruption. But Alexis, if we move on this, they won't just try to discredit you. They'll try to eliminate you. They already are. Alexis's voice was steel. But now we have proof of why. Show them how much money they're making off false arrests. Show them the kickback patterns. Show them everything. Harper spread out more files, her legal mind already building cases. We'll need protection for witnesses. Several of these officers might flip if offered immunity. Already handled, Cross said. I've got a task force on standby. But timing is crucial. If Briggs realizes we have all this, he'll burn everything and run, Alexis finished. That's why we trigger him first. Make him react without thinking. She pulled out a final file. Surveillance photos showing Briggs meeting with prison executives in private locations. He's already paranoid. When these hit the media, he'll assume someone in his inner circle betrayed him. He'll make mistakes. Harper looked concerned. He'll also become more dangerous. You're literally threatening his entire power structure. Good. Alexis's voice was cold. Let him feel threatened. Let him gather his most loyal thugs. Let him think he can still solve this with force. She checked her watch. In fact, he's probably already planning something. Cross straightened. You think he'll make a direct move against you? I'm counting on it. But this time, we control where and when. Alexis pointed to a map showing an abandoned impound lot on the edge of town. It's isolated, no civilians, limited escape routes, and our surveillance shows his deputies using it for unauthorized meetings. Perfect place for an ambush, Cross said grimly. Exactly. So we leak my location through his informants. Let him think he has one last chance to silence me before these files go public. Alexis's eyes were focused and lethal. He'll bring everyone who's compromised, everyone who can't afford an investigation. Harper shook her head. It's incredibly risky. Even with your training, it's necessary. Alexis cut in. We need them all in one place, making one last criminal act we can document. Clean, clear evidence of conspiracy. Cross studied her for a long moment. You're talking about using yourself as bait. I'm talking about ending this completely. She met his gaze. Your task force can't move until we have absolute proof of criminal intent. I'll get you that proof. They spent the next hours refining the plan. Harper coordinated with trusted reporters to prepare the financial exposure. Cross-positioned surveillance teams. Alexis walked them through tactical scenarios, entry points, likely reactions. The sun tracked across the sky as they worked. Alexis kept one eye on her phone, watching for news about her mother. The jail was still denying visits, claiming security concerns. By late afternoon, their sources confirmed movement in Briggs's camp. Deputies were being quietly contacted. Vehicles were being moved to the impound lot. The trap was being set, exactly as Alexis had predicted. Darkness fell as she parked a block from the lot. Through her windshield, she could see multiple vehicles already gathered inside the fence. More headlights approached from side streets. Briggs was assembling his force. Alexis checked her phone one last time. A text from Cross. Surveillance in position. Still time to wait for backup. She didn't respond. Instead, she stepped out into the cool night air, her boots silent on the cracked pavement. The lot's chain-link fence rattled softly in the breeze. Beyond it, shadowy figures moved between parked cars and storage containers. She could hear their muttered voices, the metallic sounds of weapons being checked. Briggs was gathering everyone who was compromised, everyone who had participated in his corruption. Just as she'd planned. Inside the dimly lit impound lot, Alexis walked steadily through pools of shadow cast by security lights. Briggs stood in the center of a loose circle, nearly a dozen deputies spread out around him. The air was thick with tension and the metallic smell of old cars. "You just couldn't let it go," Briggs called out, his voice echoing off container walls. "Had to keep pushing until you forced our hand." Alexis scanned her surroundings with practiced efficiency. Stacked shipping containers created urban canyons. Rusted vehicles sat like silent witnesses. Tools and chains lay scattered across oil-stained concrete. Every piece of terrain was a potential weapon or shield. "Nobody leaves here until she's dealt with," Briggs announced to his men. "Permanently." The deputies shifted nervously, checking weapons. Some held batons or lengths of pipe. Others gripped heavy chains. A few had hands hovering near holstered firearms. Their breath fogged in the cold night air. "Last chance to walk away," Alexis said calmly. "Anyone who leaves now stays off the indictment list." A young deputy, barely more than a rookie, took an uncertain step backward. Briggs whirled on him. "You move! Your career is over," he snarled. "Everyone here is committed. No backing out." The deputy froze, fear visible even in the dim light. Alexis logged his position. He'd hesitate in the fight, creating a gap in their circle. "Take her!" Briggs ordered. The first deputy charged forward, swinging a heavy chain. Alexis stepped inside his arc with fluid grace, caught his wrist, and twisted. The chain clattered to the ground as he dropped, crying out in pain. She kicked it away into the darkness. That broke the tension. Deputies rushed her from multiple angles, weapons raised. Alexis moved like water, each motion flowing into the next. A baton strike whistled past her head as she ducked. She caught the attacker's arm, using his momentum to throw him into two others. Metal rang against metal as a pipe hit the container behind her. Alexis spun, drove her elbow into the deputy's solar plexus, then pushed off him to avoid a chain swinging for her legs. The fight expanded, deputies spreading out to surround her. Alexis backed toward a storage container, analyzing angles and distances. 3 deputies approached from the front, trying to pin her. Instead of retreating, she planted one foot on the container's side, pushed up, and grabbed the edge. In one smooth motion, she pulled herself onto the top, gaining the high ground. "Don't let her stay up there!" Briggs shouted. "Get her down!" 2 deputies scrambled up opposite sides of the container. Alexis waited until they were committed to their climb, then stomped hard on one's fingers. He fell back with a yell. The other managed to get one hand on top. She grabbed his wrist and yanked him forward, sending him tumbling across the container's surface. Below, deputies circled like wolves, looking for angles to attack. Some tried throwing tools and debris. Alexis dodged a wrench, letting it clang behind her. The elevation gave her precious seconds to study their positioning. Briggs had moved back, coordinating the assault. 4 deputies guarded the container's corners. 3 more spread out with chains and pipes, ready to strike if she descended. The rookie hung back, clearly uncertain. A deputy with a baton managed to climb up from behind. Alexis heard his boots on metal and spun. He swung wild, off balance on the uneven surface. She blocked with her forearm, trapped his weapon arm, and used his forward momentum to throw him off the container. He crashed into two others below. "Use your firearms!" Briggs screamed, losing composure. "End this!" The sound of multiple holsters unsnapping echoed through the lot. Alexis was already moving. She ran along the container's edge as the first shots cracked out, bullets sparking off metal. At the corner, she grabbed a hanging chain and swung down, putting the container between her and the armed deputies. In the shadows underneath, she found the chain she'd kicked away earlier. Wrapping one end around her fist, she waited as boots approached from both sides. The deputies were moving more cautiously now, coordinating their attacks. A baton thrust into the darkness, trying to flush her out. Alexis caught it with the chain, yanked hard, and disarmed its owner. Another deputy dove under the container with a pipe raised. She redirected his strike into the metal above, the impact numbing his hands. Shouts and curses filled the air as more deputies converged. Alexis rolled out from her cover, chain whipping out to tangle one deputy's legs. He pitched forward as she rose, using him as a shield against the others. When two rushed her together, she pushed her captive into them and spun away. The fight shifted through pools of light and shadow. Alexis moved constantly, never letting them pin her down. She used the terrain ruthlessly, slamming attackers into containers, tripping them over debris, forcing them to bunch up in narrow spaces where they hindered each other. The rookie finally worked up his courage and charged with a length of pipe. Alexis disarmed him almost gently, then pushed him away. "Stay down," she advised. "This isn't your fight." He scrambled back, eyes wide with fear and relief. Briggs was shouting himself hoarse, trying to coordinate his remaining forces. Half his deputies were already down, nursing broken bones, twisted joints, or simply unwilling to rise. The others were hesitating, their confidence shattered. Alexis vaulted onto a wrecked car, chain still gripped in one hand. Two deputies rushed her position from opposite sides. She flipped down between them just as they swung, their weapons passing through empty air where she had been. Her boots hit concrete as their momentum carried them forward, and their weapons collided with brutal force, sending both deputies staggering. Alexis swept their legs with a low spin, leaving them groaning on the concrete. She rolled to her feet in the center of the impound lot, where flickering floodlights cast shifting shadows across 8 remaining deputies. "Form up!" Briggs bellowed from behind his men. "Don't let her pick you off." The deputies moved into a loose semicircle, brandishing an array of weapons. 2 held service pistols at low ready. 3 gripped metal pipes, or batons. Another pair had heavy chains, and one clutched a length of rebar torn from construction debris. Alexis's breath came steady despite the exertion. Her eyes tracked each opponent, measuring distances and angles. A broken side mirror from a wrecked car glinted by her foot. She kicked it up casually, catching it by the plastic backing. "Last warning," she called out. "Drop your weapons and walk away." One deputy with a pistol fired without warning. Alexis was already moving, the mirror flashing up to catch the muzzle flash. The bullet sparked off the glass, fragmenting harmlessly. Before he could adjust his aim, she flung the mirror shard like a throwing star. It sliced across his hand, making him drop the gun with a yelp. 2 chain-wielding deputies attacked from opposite sides, trying to tangle her limbs. Alexis dropped and rolled as metal links whistled overhead. She came up with a length of rebar, blocked one chain wrap, and trapped the other against the ground. A sharp tug pulled both deputies off balance. "Behind you!" Briggs shouted. A baton swung for her head. Alexis brought the rebar up in a precise block. The impact shattered the wooden baton, sending splinters flying. She reversed her grip and drove the rebar's end into the deputy's chest, knocking him back, gasping. The second gunman tried to circle for a clear shot. Alexis grabbed the nearest deputy and threw him bodily through a car's windshield. The glass exploded outward, forcing the gunman to shield his eyes. She closed the distance in that split second, stripped his weapon, and cracked the grip across his jaw. "She's not human!" someone shouted. "Shut up and fight!" Briggs roared. The remaining deputies attacked as one, desperation making them reckless. Alexis moved through their assault like water through rocks. A pipe glanced off her shoulder. She caught it, twisted, and sent its wielder sprawling. A chain wrapped her forearm. She yanked its owner into a knee strike that left him retching. Every movement was precise, controlled, but relentless. She used their own weapons against them, turned their attacks into openings. A deputy swung high with rebar. She ducked under, caught his wrist, and guided the metal bar into another attacker's knee. Both went down screaming. The fight spread across the lot as deputies stumbled back, tried to regroup, then charged again. Alexis never stayed still, using the terrain to control engagement distances. She vaulted a hood when they tried to surround her, kicked off a container wall to avoid a wild chain swing, rolled under a pipe strike to sweep another deputy's legs. Sweat gleamed on her skin, but her breathing remained measured. The deputies were gasping, cursing with effort and pain. Their attacks grew wilder, less coordinated. Fear replaced anger in their eyes as she systematically dismantled their numerical advantage. A deputy rushed her with a length of pipe. Alexis caught it mid-swing, twisted it free, and dropped him with his own weapon. Another tried to tackle her from behind. She used his momentum to throw him into a stack of tires. He landed in a tangle of rubber, too dazed to rise. The remaining deputies began backing away, looking to Briggs for guidance. Their lieutenant stood rigid with fury, watching his elite crew fall apart. Years of unchallenged authority crumbled with each defeated officer. Two deputies tried a coordinated attack, one high and one low. Alexis timed her response perfectly. She caught the high strike, redirected it into the low attacker, then dropped both with quick strikes to vulnerable points. They collapsed, clutching bruised joints and muscles. Another deputy charged with a roar, swinging a heavy chain. Alexis stepped inside his guard, blocked his arm against her body, and delivered 3 precise hits to nerve clusters. The chain slipped from nerveless fingers as he dropped to his knees. The last standing deputy, the one who'd fired first, retrieved his dropped pistol. His hand shook as he raised it. Alexis was already moving. She closed the distance before he could aim, trapped his gun arm, and applied careful pressure to his wrist. The weapon clattered to the ground as tendons stretched to their limit. "Please," he gasped. "Don't!" She released him with a small push. He stumbled back, then turned and ran into the darkness beyond the floodlights. The sound of his boots faded into the night. Alexis stood in the center of the lot, surrounded by groaning, defeated deputies. Some clutched injured limbs. Others lay still, conscious but unwilling to rise. The ground was littered with dropped weapons, chains, pipes, broken batons, and scattered debris. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths as she took in the scene. Despite the intense combat, her movements remained fluid, controlled. She had fought with precision rather than anger, dismantling their assault with tactical efficiency. The floodlights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the battlefield. In their unsteady glow, Briggs stood alone, his face twisted with rage and fear as he gripped a steel pipe in white-knuckled hands. The weapon trembled slightly, betraying his terror as he faced the woman who had just defeated his entire crew. Briggs let out an animalistic roar and charged forward, the steel pipe whistling through the air in wild, desperate swings. His face was contorted with rage and fear, spittle flying as he screamed incoherently. The floodlights caught the metal's dull gleam as it sliced toward Alexis's head. She shifted her weight slightly, letting the pipe pass within inches of her face. The breeze from its passage barely stirred her hair. Briggs stumbled forward, thrown off balance by his own momentum and fury. "Stand still and fight," he bellowed, recovering for another swing. Alexis remained centered, tracking his movements with practiced ease. "You're done, Lieutenant! Drop it!" He responded with another wild assault, the pipe cutting violent arcs through the air. Each swing grew more erratic than the last, his technique degrading into pure desperation. Alexis weaved through the attacks, her movements economical and precise. "You ruined everything!" Briggs screamed. The pipe crashed against a nearby container when she sidestepped, sending metallic echoes across the lot. Years of control, respect, gone because of you. Respect? Alexis's voice remained level despite the lethal dance. "You mean fear. That's all you ever had." He swung the pipe in a vicious horizontal strike. This time, instead of evading, Alexis stepped into his guard. Her forearm caught the pipe mid-swing, trapping it against her body. The impact was jarring, but her technique absorbed the force perfectly. Briggs tried to wrench the weapon free, but Alexis had already secured her grip. She shifted her weight, applying targeted pressure with her forearm braced against the pipe's length. The metal groaned, then snapped with a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding containers. Before Briggs could release his end, Alexis flowed into a joint lock. Her hands found precise pressure points as she controlled his wrist and elbow. He tried to resist, but physics and leverage were absolute. "No," he started to say. Alexis completed the motion. There was a wet popping sound as his elbow dislocated, followed by a distinct crack as the arm broke cleanly. Briggs's scream cut through the night air. He dropped to his knees, cradling his ruined arm. "You crazy He choked out through clenched teeth. "I'd think carefully about your next words," Alexis said quietly. She maintained the joint lock with one hand, ensuring he stayed down. "Federal agents are recording everything now." Briggs's head snapped up. Through the pain sweat on his face, she saw the moment he registered the new arrivals. Investigator Cross stood at the lot's entrance with several FBI agents, their weapons drawn. More importantly, multiple cameras and recording devices were pointed directly at the scene. "This is your one chance," Alexis continued, applying subtle pressure to remind him of his position. "Confess, all of it. The traffic stop setup, the evidence tampering, the coordination with the private prisons, everything. I don't know what you're—" He cut off with a gasp as she shifted her grip slightly. "Wrong answer." Her voice remained steady. "Let's start with the dash cam footage you deleted. Walk us through exactly how that happened." Briggs tried to squirm free, but the joint lock was absolute. Sweat ran down his face as he looked frantically between Alexis and the advancing federal agents. His resistance crumbled. "Fine," he spat. "I ordered the footage erased. Had IT wiped the whole system to cover our tracks. And the reason for the initial stop?" His laugh was bitter, tinged with pain. "We target them all. Anyone black in a nice car gets stopped, searched, arrested if possible. Keeps the private facilities full, keeps the kickbacks flowing. Who else is involved? Cross called out as he approached, recorder extended. Half the department. Judge Maxwell. D.O. Reynolds. Briggs's words tumbled out now, his composure shattered. They all get their cut. Been running it for years. Alexis maintained the hold as Cross moved closer, documenting every detail. Around them, federal agents were securing the conscious deputies, reading rights and applying cuffs. Medical teams began arriving to treat the more seriously injured officers. "And my mother?" Alexis asked quietly. "The false arrest?" "Insurance," Briggs grimaced. "Thought we could pressure you to back off. Should have known better. Should have seen what you were when you dropped my men that first day." Red and blue lights began strobing across the lot as more law enforcement vehicles arrived. The flashing colors painted surreal patterns across the scattered weapons and fallen deputies. Evidence teams moved in, photographing and documenting the scene. "That's enough for now," Cross said, stopping the recording. He nodded to nearby agents. "Take him." 2 FBI agents approached with cuffs. Alexis released the joint lock smoothly, stepping back as they secured Briggs. He swayed on his knees, pale and sweating, as they recited his rights. "This isn't over," he snarled as they pulled him to his feet. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Actually," Cross said, "we have exactly what we need. Your confession plus the evidence we've gathered? Your entire network is done." They began leading Briggs away. His composure cracked completely as the reality of his situation hit home. He started screaming, hurling threats and obscenities that echoed off the containers. Alexis stood motionless, watching as they dragged him toward a waiting vehicle. The flashing emergency lights cast alternating shadows across her face. She remained silent, her expression neutral, as Briggs's shouts faded into the night. Around her, the impound lot had transformed into a full crime scene. Evidence markers dotted the ground. Photographers documented the fallen deputies and scattered weapons. Federal agents moved with purpose, securing suspects and gathering testimony. The corrupt system Briggs had built was being dismantled piece by piece under the strobing lights. Morning light streamed through the tall windows of the federal building, casting long shadows across the polished floor. Alexis sat in Investigator Cross's office, a cup of untouched coffee growing cold on the desk before her. Harper Lane sat beside her, legal papers spread across her lap, while Cross leaned against his desk with a satisfied expression. "The dominoes are falling fast," Cross said, holding up a fresh report. Briggs's confession opened the floodgates. Deputies are turning on each other, everyone trying to cut a deal before it's too late. Harper nodded, rifling through her documents. "The evidence is overwhelming. Briggs, Dawson, and Riker are facing multiple federal civil rights violations. The conspiracy charges alone carried decades of prison time." "What about the others?" Alexis asked, her voice steady. "The DA submitted his resignation this morning," Cross replied. "Didn't even try to fight it. Judge Maxwell is under investigation by the Judicial Review Board. The sheriff's entire command structure is being dismantled." Alexis took a slow breath, processing the rapid changes. Just days ago, these men had seemed untouchable, protected by their badges and a corrupt system. Now they were falling like playing cards in a strong wind. "Your mother's release papers were processed an hour ago," Harper added softly. "All charges have been expunged. The county is already talking settlement to avoid a lawsuit." A tight knot in Alexis's chest finally began to loosen. Her mother's false arrest had been the cruelest part of Briggs's retaliation. "How is the restructuring looking?" "The FBI is overseeing a complete overhaul," Cross explained. "New leadership, new training protocols, external oversight committees. They're using this case as a template for reforming other troubled departments." He pulled up a news website on his computer monitor, turning it so Alexis could see. The headlines were a stark contrast to the smear campaign of just days before. "Delta Force Commander exposes police corruption. Hero veteran stands up to systemic abuse. Corrupt officers face federal charges." "Public opinion has shifted completely," Harper said. "You're being hailed as a whistleblower who exposed decades of institutional racism and abuse of power. People are calling for national reforms based on your experience." Alexis skimmed the articles, seeing her own story reflected back in a new light. The truth had finally broken through the wall of lies Briggs had built. "That's actually why we called you in today," Cross said, straightening up. "The Justice Department is forming a special task force to review and reform use-of-force standards across the country. They want you to head it." Alexis looked up sharply. "Me?" Harper smiled. "Who better? You have the military background, the tactical expertise, and now first-hand experience with police abuse of power. You can speak to both sides of the equation. Your unique perspective could help reshape how law enforcement approaches conflict resolution," Cross added. "Help prevent other departments from becoming what Briggs created here." Alexis stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. The morning sun caught the glass of distant buildings, making them shine like beacons. She thought about that night on the highway, when 2 patrol cars had targeted her simply for being black in an expensive vehicle. How many others had faced similar abuse without her training and resources to fight back? "The position would give you real authority to implement changes," Harper continued. "Set new training standards, establish accountability measures, create proper oversight systems. You could help ensure no one else has to go through what you and your mother experienced," Cross said quietly. Alexis turned back to face them. Her expression was resolute. "When do they need an answer?" "They're announcing the task force next week," Cross replied. "But they're willing to wait for you if you need time to consider." "I don't," Alexis said firmly. "This is exactly the kind of mission I'm trained for. Identifying threats, developing countermeasures, protecting civilians. The battlefield has just shifted." Harper beamed. "I was hoping you'd say that. I already have the paperwork ready." They spent the next hour reviewing documents and discussing initial priorities. The scope of the task force was ambitious, but Alexis felt energized by the challenge. This was a chance to create lasting change. As they wrapped up the meeting, Cross's phone buzzed. He checked the message and smiled. "Your mother's processing is complete. She's waiting in the lobby." Alexis gathered her things quickly. The 3 of them rode the elevator down together, emerging into the bright marble lobby where Sarah Ward stood waiting. Her mother's face lit up at the sight of her daughter. They embraced tightly, neither speaking for a long moment. When they separated, both women had tears in their eyes. "Ready to go home?" Alexis asked softly. Her mother squeezed her hand. "More than ready." They walked together through the lobby's revolving doors, emerging onto the courthouse steps. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the promise of spring. News crews had gathered, but they kept a respectful distance, allowing the mother and daughter their moment of peace. Alexis took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past weeks finally lifting from her shoulders. The storm had passed. The corrupt system that had targeted them was being dismantled. More importantly, She now had the opportunity to prevent similar abuse from happening to others. Her mother seemed to read her thoughts. "You're going to take that task force position, aren't you?" "Yes," Alexis replied. "Someone needs to make sure what happened to us can't happen again." Sarah nodded proudly. "Then you better get to work. There's a lot of fixing to be done." They stood together in the morning sunlight, free at last from Briggs's shadow. The courthouse rose behind them like a massive stone guardian, no longer a symbol of corruption, but of justice restored. For Alexis, it marked not just an ending, but a new beginning, a chance to reshape the very system she had survived. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please like the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.